Good afternoon. We are going to call the regular meeting of the Hood River White Salmon Bridge Authority to order at 2:01 p.m. Let the record show we have a quorum. I do not yet see Marla nor Doug, so we will have, and I don't see Seth either. So we will have Eric and Ben sitting in until Marla or Doug show up. Are there any modifications or changes to the agenda? Anyone like to add? Okay, hearing none, I'd take a motion to approve the agenda.
So move. Second.
There's a motion and a second to approve the agenda. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Everybody remembered. Look at that. Next, we move into public comment. Comments will be limited to 3 minutes per individual. If there's anyone in the room who would like to provide public comment, and we have a glowing group of people online, is there anyone who would like to provide public comment to the Hood River White Salmon Bridge Authority? I will ask one more time because I'm looking at the names and I don't see much public. Is there anyone who would like to provide public comment to the Hood River White Salmon Bridge Authority? Unmute yourself. Kevin. Just kidding. Kevin is kidding. Would you just like to say hi, Kevin?
Hello, everybody. Kevin Greenwood, Executive Director, Port of Hood River.
That is a lovely public comment. Thank you, Kevin. Is there anyone else who would like to provide public comment to the Hood River White Salmon Bridge Authority? Hearing none, we will move into executive reports. We are going to skip the co-chair report and hit that during the committee reports. And we will move into the bridge director, bridge update report with Mike.
All right. Thank you. On the government affairs, I did get an email just before we came into the meeting. They would like to move that in district from the 26th to the 31st. So I will follow up with you on an email to see who is available on that date. And then we can finalize that date. That was for the congressional in district. Senator Murray's office was not available until the 31st. So I'll follow up with you on that. No changes on the funding, finance, and tolling. We're still waiting to hear back from the MPDG grant. The BIP grants, one thing that we did hear on that, and we have not got complete confirmation on this, is that grant application may not come out until January, which is a significant difference than we thought. But we'll let you know as soon as we get some kind of hard confirmation on that. But the rumor is that's not coming out until January. The treaty tribes, we're making good progress with the treaty tribes. We did reach out to Yakima Nation. FHWA is in contact with them about doing a consultation on the 106 to move that forward, as well as just following up with the treaty MOA. Still waiting on Nez Perce to send us their draft of the MOA. And we have a meeting tomorrow with Umatilla. We've now got a reoccurring meeting with them every 2 weeks, and a schedule to work towards the final MOA with them by the end of the year. So hopefully that will help us to progress the Umatilla MOA. The Warm Springs, we are requesting another meeting with them. Hopefully that'll happen soon, and we'll continue to work through that with the Umatilla or the Warm Springs. Progressive Design Build, the RFP has been in industry review. That closes tomorrow. We met with a couple firms today. We've got a couple more meetings, 3 meetings again tomorrow. Those are kind of the confidential meetings to just get comments back on RFP. So far, they've went really well. No real significant comments on the RFP. We think we have 3, potentially 4 firms, 4 teams that will be proposing on the project. So it's good interest for what we're seeing, especially Washington DOT is not seeing that. So if we can get 4, that would be tremendous for our project to get 4 proposals. So I think it just speaks to the type of project and the fact that we're organized to be industry friendly, but also have the support, and they see this as a real project that's moving forward. So that's all good. Geotech survey are still just working through their daily activities. Geotech's data report will be out at the end of October with the RFP. So if there's anything significant with that, we'll provide an update at that time. Right away, we will have a right away presentation today. That's our single presentation, and that'll be just going over high level, what some of the impacts are of a right-of-way process when you have federal money. So we'll be going through that. And that's it. Thank you.
Okay, next we will move into our budget report from Brian.
Good afternoon. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, although you do have this report in your packet. This early, let me get this shared. So this is an early iteration of our monthly finance report. This will continue to evolve as we coordinate with the new co-chairs of both the funding and finance and engineering and construction committees. The full report is in your packet. Today, we're just going to focus on page 1, which is the executive summary, some of the key numbers and how we're doing against those right now. Starting from the top, everybody should recognize project estimate $520 million. Of that $520 million, we have 119 of committed funding, representing about 23% of that total. Of those $119 million, only 20 are currently accessible or available for us to use for reimbursements. We are working on getting access to the remaining 99, especially the ones committed to this biennium. So of the 119, only 17% are currently available, and that $20 million is made up of the planning grants. If you look at the top right on the donut chart there, the outer ring represents the 520 and kind of our financial plan against all of our pending potential fund sources. The inner ring represents the commitments to date and percentage of the totals. Moving down the page, of the $20 million of funds available, we have committed $17.3 million to work through contracts and amendments to RBMC and others. That means we only have about $3 million of authorization left to use, and that's why we're working hard to get access to the other funds that have been committed. Of the 17.3, you can see in the donut chart on the right how that is assigned to our project phases. Right now, we are investing in management, planning, and design and right-of-way. Most of the project is made up of the final design and construction, but we're not in that phase yet. Of the 17.3 million, 10.2 has been spent already, again, against the planning grants that have been previously obtained. We have about 7.1 million left to spend of the authorized work in this fiscal year. The bottom bar chart represents our monthly planned and actual expenditures. The blue bars are our plan for the fiscal year, green, actual, red, forthcoming estimates. So you can see a spike there in September. We intend to see the geotech and their drilling vendor's invoice hit in September, where we had previously programmed it in July and August. And that's the summary for this group. There's more pages, more details. Feel free to contact me with any questions or the chairs of the committees. Any questions here?
Yeah, I've got one question on that page. Second line, funds pending, $99 million. Do you have that broken out to, if we could get access to it, where they kind of programmed which year? In other words, how much of that could be made available in 2024?
In 2024, so right now, committed against this biennium is another $15 million total from WSBA and $20 million from Oregon. We've heard early that the Oregon funds would not be available until the very end of the biennium, which represents kind of spring of calendar year 2025. We're working with WSBA to get access to the first $5 million pot as early as the end of this calendar year, hopefully by the end of this fiscal year in mid-2024, so that we can commit future work with the PDB team. After that, another $10 million is still being worked out on the type of money and how that gets assigned or allocated to our project. Early thoughts that we've heard from WashDOT is that would be federal funds, which might have to be transferred to ODOT in order to be administered to us. But Mike, I think Mike Shannon might have any additional changes to that plan if he knows them.
No, and that's consistent. We're working through with WashDOT to get those agreements in place, so that we can get access to that. And then we're working with Oregon lobbyists to actually see if we can advance some of the 20 million from Oregon also. So
not throwing work on the Budget Finance Committee. This is an area that's a big concern to me. We're trying to award a progressive design build contract early next year. Right now, today, we got $3 million. Okay, that's way insufficient to. So I personally think we need a kind of a plan of attack and a little schedule of what can we do, who's going to do it, who do we have to go see, how do we work through the issues to break open that 99 million where we get at least, and this is too small, 5 million early in 24, if not this year. I would feel a lot more comfortable if we can get all 15 of that Washington money released quickly. I'm concerned that we may have a challenge with our progressive design build contractor, and we're running at way tight. So anything we could do to crank that up a little bit would be, I think, a smart thing to do.
Any other comments online or in the room? If you're online, raise your hand. I am not seeing any. Brian, do you have anything more for us?
Nope, that's the report unless there's additional questions.
Okay, we will move into our engineering update from Commissioner Fox.
I'll start it and then ask my colleagues to jump in. We've spent the last couple of weeks reading through the RFP, the draft RFP that was issued out for industry comment. We provided some comments back in, primarily on kind of the back end of the effort and how we're going to control schedules and cost and that kind of thing. I personally have also been sitting in on the industry reviews. We had 2 today and we have 3 tomorrow. But Eric, do you have any comments you'd like to share?
Document is quite comprehensive. There are 2 large contract sections. And I guess this is kind of a question for our group, is if we've sent those off for legal review or when we put that in the process. The rest of it, I think, is very comprehensive. We do have a little issue about just the different management plans, and are we getting an active management plan or a static management plan? We've talked about that a little bit, and how do we adjust that, the final issuance of the RFP. So, and Mike, we haven't gotten much feedback from contractors on that, even though we've talked about it.
There hasn't been a great deal of comments on those particular issues, which doesn't surprise me. Frankly, the more nebulous we make this RFP, the better it is for the contractors, because they can always point back and say, well, you never asked me for that. So I think that's one of the areas that we're offering to tighten up. My guess is we're at about an 80% product with the current RFP. But as we go through the industry review and in our comments, we'll tighten it up to 100% before the end of October. So Catherine, do you have any question or comment?
Yeah, thank you. I thought the RFP was amazingly done. I think it was like reading a book. It was pretty great. I had to read a couple pages 3 or 4 times, so it took quite a while, but I do like how we're very clear on the roles in which role we expect to be doing, here co-located versus virtual. I think that's really important for us to be really clear with our expectations. And then I did have, based on the RFP, I thought the way that we were very clear about the interview process and how much it's going to be weighted, along with giving the example that we are going to be doing problem sets. So I think it's really great how we're setting up the contractors for success. I did enjoy the fact that we didn't lay out a lot of guidelines. We laid out a lot of ability for innovation. We didn't tell them exactly what we exactly want. So as a consultant, I enjoy bringing my best foot forward, my team here. And I think that's going to be really exciting. I do look forward to going through the comments with the team and with our group, just to kind of see where we all are. Do we have that date set, or is that something, Mike, that you want us to kind of schedule soon, or? Yep. Okay.
Let's set up a time internally, and then we'll get your comments over to Mike to get incorporated in. I think we got 3 sets of comments now, so I think it's worthy sometime next week that we sit down together, or maybe later this week, depending on your schedules.
Any other questions for the engineering side? Online? I guess, playing off of your most recent statement there, Mike, if the funding and finance doesn't come in at the timing we need it to come in, what is our ability to pivot to a more traditional, design?
Well, what we're gearing ourselves up to, we believe we've got and can have enough money to get through design. We have to open up some of that funding to be able to say that, but it's there. If we, for some reason, can't get the $200 million from the federal grant this time around, then I think we're going to have a discussion. We keep going through design, and we may go all the way through design and then turn it basically into a design bid build type contract. And we've got that flexibility. We'd rather not do that, but we've got that if we need it.
Thank you. Yes.
So I'm wondering, keying in on what Mike was just talking about, have we initiated any discussions with the DOTs as to whether there's a possibility of us borrowing money from them so that they're not stuck building the bridge by themselves?
I would say not directly in that way, but yes, we are working with them to get access to their, the funding that they've put on the project at a quicker pace in order to get that funding, but not outside of that, no.
Well, we did ask our lobbyists from Oregon, and I don't think we asked Washington, but is there any unspent monies from projects from last year that we could tap into, borrow this year, pay it back in 25? And they're still researching that. They gave one response, but it wasn't a complete response yet.
Yeah,
I guess,
I'm sorry, yes, so in that aspect, we have asked them both if there was additional money out of the leftover federal money. Was one ask that we had when there was some, but they said that was, when that came out, the asks had already gone in before the money came back out, so the amounts they got were already spoken for on the federal money, but we did ask Oregon to see if there was a way to advance their 20 million. And that's what I was referring to earlier, was they are looking at that to see if there's a way they can give us the 20 million. And then when we get the bond sale for the lottery later, then that money would just go back to them, or a portion of that would go back to them.
Mike, so you were saying we believe we have enough money to get us through 1A, correct? Which is 80% design at the end of that. Is that correct? That's 1B, is 80%. Okay, thank you for the clarification.
We still have to get some of that money released to us, but it's there.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, seeing none, we will move into our governance update. Commissioner Bepp.
Okay, so first thing is it always pays to pull off the freeway to read the historical signs on the side of the freeway. I was driving down to Klamath Falls the other day and found that the first poured in place segmental arch concrete bridge in the United States was the Crooked River Bridge across the Crooked River between here and Bend. So it's funny because I asked the question at the previous meeting when a gentleman was talking about that sort of thing. I asked how long this technology has been around. And it turns out that the first one was, I think it was 1994. I sent you a picture. Do you know why I was sending you that picture? Okay. Yes, I think it was 1994, 1993 that bridge was constructed to replace the 1920 something bridge, which is next to the 1910 railroad bridge. So anytime you do have a chance to pull over there, I recommend reading that sign. It's pretty interesting. I did get a chance to complete my draft of the memo, which is intended to guide the structuring of an IGA between the port and the bridge authority. And I took that document. Mike and Jake have both had a chance to look at that document. And based on that, I passed it along to our attorneys. The idea being that we intrinsic in this is the separation of the concept of governmental and proprietary interests of an authority or a special district. And it's complicated enough that before asking the port to start thinking about this, I want to make sure we have it right. So asked our attorneys to look at that. And Jake, I did not ask at that point how long it would take them to review it. Do you know?
We don't have an answer.
Maybe we can give them a chance, but maybe sometime before the meeting's over, ask them when they may be able to when they expect to be done with that review. It is not considered a top priority item. This is not preventing us from moving forward, but it is something that we should be resolving relatively quickly. So it's probably in the medium priority zone of things, given that they've just signed on with us.
So my
I think, yeah, so I'm sorry, I should have explained that memo has to do with the financial involvement between the port and the bridge authority, as well as kind of unraveling or unspooling the port has been acting as the fiscal agent for all of these years, has been pushing all these things along. We have to figure out what can be turned over when, so that at some point, sooner rather than later, the bridge authority has authority for the things that the bridge authority should have authority for. And we know that this is going to be important at a minimum by the time we're going for TIFIA loans, that it needs to be clear that the bridge authority is the governmental entity in this, and any ambiguity will be held against us. So we're trying to get this all resolved, but that's, as you said, that's next Monday or Wednesday, not Friday of this week. And that's it for me.
Okay, we will move on to communications update. Jessica, because Marla is not present today.
Hey everyone, I've got a few quick updates for you. So we met a couple weeks ago and discussed what our focus for communications will be for the remainder of the fall. And we've got a couple of key things. The biggest one being that we are preparing a media outreach plan, so that way we can reach both local and state media related to the locals' perspective of the need for the bridge replacement, because we are aware that we've got federal meetings with federal folks, and we're going to be talking about the grant needs beginning in October. So we want to just like build up that this is more than just, a technical need. Like there are everyday users that rely on this bridge. So some of that's going to include another Story Gorge video, We're also preparing some press releases for various media outlets. And so we'll make sure to include some of those materials in the next package for you all. Another focus for us is to continue to introduce the Bridge Authority to the public. Thanks for all of you you all attended several of the outreach events that we had over the summer. We're going to continue to basically introduce you to the public through social media and through the new .gov website. So we're in the process of developing some short videos based on the video work that we did earlier this summer. And so you'll start to see some of those soon. And last but not least, I'm excited to work a little bit more with our new committee members, Nathan and Jacob Edwards. So we are looking at finding a date so that way we can start to just get up to speed on what we want our committee to focus on for the next year. And so y'all, we'll make sure that we're reporting back from this committee on a monthly basis on what we're working on. That's it for me for now.
Questions for Communications Committee?
Hey, and just a question for you, Jessica. You know,
Please.
we're working with the tribes, trying to get MOAs together. Is there a story in there someplace?
Potentially. I mean, I think that the public is really interested in knowing what's happening with the tribes and what our level of involvement is. So I think we could probably let the public know that we have made quite a bit of progress with them. I can work with Mike Shannon to figure out what that story might look like.
Yeah, I'm thinking maybe an interview or two with the tribes themselves. Maybe an interview with ODOT oversight,
Sure.
you know, kind of give it a little depth.
Yeah. I like it.
Any other questions or comments for communications? I would just like to bring up, when I'm looking online at our Facebook, our new Bridge Authority has 88 followers and 48 likes. We are putting videos up left and right, and they're getting maybe one share and not many likes. We need to all work together to start getting this out. I would like to ask Kevin at the Port of Hood River to maybe create a link or something that says, hey, when you want to hear about the new bridge, make sure you follow this group, because the Port of Hood River has 2.6 thousand followers. And whenever they share something, it gets shared 20 times, at least directly. And so in order for us, we're spending a lot of money on these videos and putting them up, and we need to get our followers and likes up so that we can do everything we can. I see Kevin smiling, but I don't see him talking. I see him talking now, but I don't hear him talking because he's still muted. Kevin, you're still muted.
We're reposting those.
I can tell you, I can see when you repost it, but that doesn't drive anything to our page. So if you guys could make a comment saying, make sure you like this, then at least we'll be able to start seeing the likes go up on our side as well. Just a thought. I'll leave it up to the Communications Committee to deal with it though.
It's a good point. Thanks.
Okay, if there's nothing else, we will move into the finance and funding.
There we go. I need to get together with my other finance and funding members now that we have been on the commission. And so we'll plan to do that as soon as we can get together and get our schedules aligned to get together and meet up. It's gonna be good to see the three of us together at some point soon.
I'm sorry, who's the third member?
Myself, Ben, and Seth.
Grant, just a reminder on that, we do have Amy here now for administrative assistance. So if you need somebody to help coordinate any setting up of meetings, finding times, any of that stuff, just let her know and she can help you with that.
Okay, we will move on to our action items. One of that is the approval or correction of the minutes. Has everyone had a chance to review the minutes? Are there any changes anyone would like to see? I am not seeing any. I would take a motion to approve the minutes.
So move.
Is there a second? There's a motion and a second to approve the minutes. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, motion carries. All right, we have an adoption of the committees and the member assignments. I think we will move forward with that as its own motion. We all work together. I think the only person that wasn't here was Seth, as well as Doug. But I know Doug was interested. Is everyone okay with the committee assignments? Okay, with that, I would entertain a motion.
I move we adopt the committees, members, assignments, mission statement, vision, values of the Red River White Salmon Bridge Authority.
Let's just do the committee.
Okay. So I move that we approve the committees and the members of the committee.
I second.
There is a motion and a second to approve the committees. All those in, any discussion? Not seeing any. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye, motion carries. Okay, this is the first time that many people have seen the mission statement, vision, and values. Usually there is a lot of discussion when it comes to vision and values, so that's why I wanted to break that up. Are there any thoughts on direction, or do you all feel comfortable in it? I would open this up for discussion. Whoever would like to go first, since Marla is not here. Any thoughts? Raise your hand if you have any thoughts.
I'm looking for it because I read it and it didn't stick.
Are there any thoughts?
I can give a thought, which is that I just got back from a conference, so I have not had a chance to review it. So just to be clear that there is an absolute reason I am not commenting because I have not reviewed it.
I will take the chair's prerogative and pull this from an action item so that everyone has a chance to review it. If anybody would like to propose any changes, I've never seen a vision designed this way. Usually it's more in the term of a way that it reads smoothly rather than bullet points, but I am also not one to ever get drugged down by mission and visions and logos. So, all right, let's hear it.
Have you ever worked with engineers before?
Never.
That's the problem. This is how we think.
Uh-huh. Okay, with that, we will push that off. But for many of us, this was our first chance. If you do have any ideas, corrections, additions, thoughts, please make sure to email Mike and then he can disseminate that out. Next up, we will move into informational items. Michael Shannon.
.gov, the main thing with .gov is everyone's email is available, hopefully all set up. So we are going to start using that primarily for everything. There will be a little bit of time here where I'll dual copy people, but we would like to transition to getting everybody set up. If we know you have a .gov set up and you're already using it, then that is the only one we'll start using. But if we haven't heard back from you as to whether or not your .gov is set up, then we will use both until we hear back from you that your .gov is ready to go. And then from then on, we'll use your .gov. So if you haven't got it set up, just let us know as soon as you do and we'll make that switch. But they are available and ready to go. We're still working on the websites and we'll update everybody once that is fully up and running. Joint Transportation Commission luncheon tomorrow. We've got the presentation ready for that. Commissioner Fox, Commissioner Anderson will be doing the presentation. They have the final versions of that. We'll have that uploaded, ready for you when you get over there. We went through it with both of them. If there's any final.
Wednesday?
Oh, did I say tomorrow? Sorry, the 27th. Apologize. 27th. Yeah.
You scared people.
I'm sorry
that's
about
why.
that. The 27th, sorry, Wednesday, the 27th. I'm sorry. Yeah, so we'll have that up and running, and it's ready to go.
Yeah, so there's a memo changing the time.
12:30. Yeah. 12:30 to 3 is what I have. That, okay.
Could you remind us what each of our roles is?
The rest of you are there for networking with the elected officials that are there about the project, the bridge authority, progress we're making, why they should fund this project. And then Commissioner Fox, Commissioner Anderson have speaking roles.
I
So-
understand that. I will look for you.
Right, and I did ask about a seating chart. There is not a seating chart. So it's just a kind of a buffet lunch. So when you get there, lunch is covered. Just try to spread out, find a, seat with people you don't know and have conversations on the project. So
Main advice is you don't talk to other
commissioners, exactly. So Columbia River Gorge Commission, Pacific Northwest Waterways are just other presentations that are coming up. The RFP schedule is still the same. We have not made any modifications. That's just in there for a reminder. So we all kind of know what that schedule is. Office location update. I think updated last time that we were not able to get the Institute location. We are in negotiations with Radcom. Their lawyer is writing up the lease. So as soon as we get that back, we will send it over to the commissioners to finalize with the goal of potentially moving in as soon as possible. My goal is the October 9th meeting to be at that new facility if possible. But I will get a good notice out, make sure everybody's aware of that if we do. I was not going to update the meeting invitation, calendar invitation until we, with emails and all of that, until we get the new location and we officially move the meeting over there, because we want to also set up the teams a little different, or Zoom a little different. But as soon as we get that location, our goal is November 1st to officially be in there. But if we can start earlier, they were amenable to us starting earlier. So any questions related to that lease agreement or anything on how we're going to be moving over there?
Your mic.
So you said that you were acquiring from them the telecom setup, because it is required under Oregon law that we have an online presence.
Yeah, so the one thing, we did some negotiations with them. The one piece that we are getting from them, well, there's a couple things, but the main piece is their conference room as it is set up today. We're getting all of that, table, chairs, video equipment, camera, it's all set up. So it'll supply all of our audio video needs. All right, and I'm actually going to turn it over to Debbie to talk about the toll revenue report. And I'll let her explain what she has in the packet.
Sorry about that. These microphones are so touchy. Sometimes they don't come on at all, and sometimes for me, they come on too soon.
I'm gonna really miss them.
Yeah, so for those of you that are online, you didn't hear that. Commissioner Babbitt said he was going to miss them. And for those that are online are going to understand why the rest of us will not miss them, because you don't hear anything except for the microphone that is on. And it was really interesting being remote last time, because it's very, very extreme. In fact, to me, it's almost unbelievable that other voices literally do not get picked up at all. So it's very interesting to be out online. Actually, I don't have a lot to say. I took I did have to throw some different reports together. P Square is working on a report that I'll be able to just print out of the system, but I knew you wanted something, and in fact, I need to check in with them because they probably have that done by now. But I knew I wanted to provide something. I wanted to get in the packet that to provide something sooner. So I took a few reports and pulled the information together to show what was the old toll and then what the new increment is. And so in the first 17 or 18, I guess really 18 days, it raised just about $200,000. And as I multiplied that out, that was actually right in line with what we were expecting. I had budgeted 3.6 million for this fiscal year. So and I knew it wouldn't start until September 1st. And so September 1st to June 30th, I was expecting about 3.6, and we're just like right in line for that dollar amount. So it's all exactly what we were expecting. So to me, that's good news. So, but does anybody have any questions about that?
I've got a real quick one. When I look at the chart, and first off, thank you for doing this. This is really, really good and helpful. The old rate revenue is the previous rate, and it stays with the port. The new rate revenue is just the delta increase, correct?
Yeah, that is correct. And so, and it's being separated out.
Great. Again, I appreciate you doing it. It makes a lot of sense. Good job.
We will also be putting something out on the website that will show the incremental increases of this over time. So once we get that up, we'll show everyone what that looks like. But that is part of the plan, is to get that out on the website and publicly have that out for everyone to be able to see it as it grows.
I probably don't want to know the answer to this, but with an integer number of cars and trucks and an integer number, a price for tolls, how do we get 4 cents?
Yeah, I should have rounded that. So there were, right at midnight, apparently there were a couple of cars that went through, and I think that they got counted as being at midnight, and I think they got charged the old rate. So there was, but there was some math that went on in there that obviously didn't make sense. And I did mean to round that out. So I apologize that even got in there. But yeah, I was really struggling with that. And it was definitely passenger vehicles, because everything else multiplied and divided out and came out exactly where I was expecting it. But passenger vehicles, and I think there was either 1 or 2 that went across right at midnight, and some kind of weird math happened with those.
So the trick that I pulled, where I pulled under the thing at midnight, I went back and forth 3 times, that actually worked?
Yeah, we actually do have some people that do some odd things, and they're actually, it's very, very clear that you're not supposed to back up, but we do have people that literally do back up and things like that. So somebody may have done something like that. There's no telling.
So I ran a little bit of just some basic numbers when I first saw this. So with just the cars, not any of the big rigs or anything, for the 196,309 trips that are total from September 1st to the 17th, 21.85% of those are cash and credit card tips. And then, so my thought is, when you bring big trucks are usually from not around the area for the most part. That number should go up significantly when you look at all the rest of the vehicles. So when you take all the total trips, that's 205,436 trips. That only increases up to 22.28% of all trips are cash and card. So that have taken that bigger hit. Personally, I thought there'd be a bigger delta there in terms of the numbers that are paying cash and card. What I really want to see is, with the increases, how many more people are signing up for the breeze buy that are going to be, whether they use it every once in a while or because they just don't want to pay it, especially those larger users that are used to paying, it gets expensive when you look at 5 axles.
So we've actually done some research on that, and we are approaching pretty much maximum breeze buy right now. When you look at agencies across the country and what their percent, now we are an outlier when you compare us. Most places that have tolls are large, they're in large areas, large population areas and are larger facilities. So we're an outlier in that sense. But we, as far as a percentage, when you hit around 80% of electronic tolling, you're kind of at about what the maximum is. In our area, the other thing I did want to say as a caveat to that too, that included Labor Day. And so we caught the end of the summer traffic, which would be a bit higher as far as paying cash. And so our overall, we are actually at about a little over 80% of breeze by when you look at, especially through the winter, when it's all primarily local people that are passing through. The other thing we are working on, which I don't think will have a huge impact on this, but just so everybody knows what's going on with tolling, there's a big push to get what they call interoperability, and that will make people that, like, if they come down from Seattle and they have like where they cross Tacoma and places like that, it'll allow them to use the breeze by system here on the bridge and just be able to go through, and then we'll have an agreement to get reimbursed from WashDOT, and vice versa. If people from this area go up to Tacoma, they can go across and then WashDOT will reimburse us for that. So we're really working on that. It's a big push nationally, but a lot of areas it's a lot more difficult because you have a lot of people and a lot of different agencies involved. California is kind of all wrapped up in trying to get theirs done. And WashDOT actually initially started working with California trying to get an agreement, and they still don't have one, but it's a lot easier when it's just two agencies. So it's just WashDOT and us trying to come up with an agreement. So I think we're going to see that pretty soon as well.
What I thought was interesting on the East Coast with Easy Pass Virginia and Easy Pass New York can't agree. They actually charge differently depending on whether you're a resident or non-resident, and they have all these entrenched ideas there which make it a total mess. Even though it's the same transponder, it works differently depending on which state you purchased it from, where you travel.
So the discussion 2 weeks ago, there were kind of two parts to it. I think that it's where are we on data, and this is great. I was kind of blown away by how much use the bridge gets. That's quite an education. Yeah. But I think the second thing was, and I don't know that we ever landed on whether you had the technology, but it was trying to somehow isolate the heavy users of the bridge. And are they, where are we with that?
Yeah, and actually I do have a report on that. So I don't have a standard report that I can run, but I did have our contractor, I refer to them as P Square. They're the software company that actually provides our tolling software. They were able to go through and pull that information for me. And so I'm going to take a look at that. I'll get that to Mike. We'll get that out to you, to all of you. I believe I did send it to the mayor of Bingen. And in my mind, for some reason, I was thinking I sent it out to everybody. But as I looked back, I don't believe I did. So I need to pull that data back, find it, make sure that it's right, and then send it. I'll send it out, get it sent out to everybody.
Any other questions or thoughts online or in the room? Not seeing any. I would just like to say thank you to Debbie. You're doing a great job, and thank you for all the great information.
We have one final informational item, and that is the in-district congressional staff visit that was tentatively scheduled for the 26th. It looks like that might shift to the 31st in order to accommodate a couple other members. So I will get back with Summit today or tomorrow, and we'll update that date. So we'll need to know your all's availability for that 31st date as well.
Related to that, have you folks put in place plans for government shutdown concerning the lobbying trip back east?
We're waiting to see if they shut down. But yes, we've tried to get everything we could refundable if something would happen. But yeah, right now we're still planning to go. But
Just so if it switches to the 31st, I'll be in a commissioner meeting, and then we need to make sure Mr. Renard still can get his pontoon boat out that day too. So make sure you double check on that. Part of the idea was to take the congressional staff out, and so we had someone that was willing to volunteer, right? So we didn't have to pay all that money to rent one and then have Mike try to learn to drive one.
Which was worse than the money. I had never owned a boat. And Florida's waters are like no wind, calm. Yeah, not even different.
Don't go there, but.
One other item that I had was, now that we're getting a little bit out of COVID and people are starting to go back to business cards. If you would like a business card, Bridge Authority business card, let me know and we will get one made up. If you've seen, mine or the one that we have that's for the project with the little QR code, it'll be basically that same thing, but it'll be for the Bridge Authority. So just let me know if you would like to have one.
So it is my experience that in the government areas that it is important to have a business card. So I would encourage people to do that. You go to conferences and people do actually use business cards. And if you don't give someone a business card, they're not going to remember who they spoke to.
Just agreeing.
So what I would say is we have the roster sheet that has your name and phone number, email on there. If you can let us know we'll use that unless we hear otherwise.
I would say for consensus, is everybody okay having some business cards? Okay, so why don't we do the whole, everybody? Okay. All right, next, we're going to move into the fun part of the day. We need to have a presentation on the right of way on a federalized project.
We were gonna have our surveyor do a presentation too. He had a last minute thing that came up, so he will not be able to go until the 9th, like literally like right before we came over. So we're just gonna do the right of way portion and then we'll have him go on October 9th with the geotech or the environmental.
While you're doing that, I had interesting, I was down at the Association of Oregon Counties meeting in Klamath Falls. I spent quite a bit of time with Tillamook County Commissioner. Turns out that her father was, in the 1960s, was the port director. And she's looking to get him to do an oral history. So we're going to hook him up with the museum and get him to do an oral history on what was going on with the port in the 1960s, which is, of course, when all the landfill was happening and a lot of other interesting stuff. So I'm sure Kevin will enjoy getting a chance to talk to him.
That may be something, Jessica. I don't know if there's a communications piece there that we may want to have them sit down and just at least hear what he has to say. Maybe something there that we want to tie back into what we're doing today too.
I was just thinking the same thing.
Okay, everyone, just hold still for a few minutes while we get this presentation loaded up, and we will be presenting shortly.
Well, while we're waiting, on the first page of the agenda, under upcoming action items, item 2, appointment of officers, what's our plan to get that in place?
That would be up to the board to decide how they want to do that. If we want to just run with committees for a while, or if you want to appoint specific board members. It's on our list to do, but wasn't something that we'd actually had a lot of discussion about yet.
And my personal thought is we don't have our own bank account yet. So having a treasurer doesn't make a lot of sense. We have staff that's acting as the secretary. So having one of us be considered a secretary who's not going to do any secretarial work, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. And since we're operating under interim rules, we might as well just hold off.
Should we then take it off the agenda for a while?
I think everybody agrees that's probably the right thing to do. All right. Have you worked with engineers before? We are going to be unplugging something, so if you all go missing, we love the technology in here, but we hope to bring you back shortly. So it's an audio visual engineer.
That's right. So if something goes wrong, now we know who to ask. Teal is ready for lots of questions. So, yeah. He's extremely nervous, so be nice. We are here. Exactly. A lot. Yes. That's why I'm I actually meant to do that a long time ago. Oh my gosh, I promised that. And in case you confuse, we're rewiring the whole building right now.
While we're sitting here and Ben, being new, would you like to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your history and yourself? And Kevin, would you shake your head or nod your head if you can hear us? Oh, yay.
As long as you hold your button.
So I'm Ben Berger. I guess nobody can see me, but sure. Hi, I guess Jessica and Kevin, as well as everybody in here. So Ben Berger, I've been a White Salmon resident since 2010. Stay, reasonably involved with what's going on in the city. I have a business background, an MBA from the University of Washington, worked for a number of different businesses with different, always kind of in manufactured product or construction businesses. So most recently was the general manager for Sustain Interiors in Hood River, which is a design and construction of residential homes, high-end residential homes. And then for that was in the aerospace industry as the vice president of operations at Zephyr for a number of years. Anything else to add?
If you have a headshot that you would like to share with us, yeah.
And not on the planning commission. Ran for city council a number of years ago and was not that disappointed when I lost by like 5 votes. But I'm very happy with the representation locally, so I have not. I'm happy to be able to put my contributions towards something like this that hopefully will have a really visible monument to all of our work.
Thank you, Ben. And I think we are ready for our presentation.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, so feel free to stop and ask questions at any time. It's gonna be kind of a quick and straightforward overview of the process and then some project specific things. So yeah, we can go ahead and start. Next slide. My name's Teal Fox. I'm a right-of-way agent. I've been working with Universal Field Services for about a year and have been in the industry for about 5 years. Universal's been in the industry for 50 years, I think, and they're national, have done a ton of stuff nationally, but locally we've worked with LPA, so cities, counties, DOTs on both sides of the river, and also engineering, utilities and things like that. Just to give a little background. So this is kind of a brief summary of the right-of-way requirements that we're looking at right now, at least on the current for the EC2 alternative. You know, a lot of agency-owned properties or utilities, which are similar. All of them generally have a unique process for granting rights and reviewing requests for property rights. And then several private properties, and we probably will need to sort out leasehold interests and if anybody's got lender requirements or anything like that too. So, yeah, go ahead and next slide. So it's like a visual, Port Hood Riverside, obviously, and then the White Salmon side, just to kind of give an idea that's kind of, it's overview of all the properties that are pretty much within the anticipated project impact area. And those are not all the same kinds of easements, but there's going to be some sort of effects, temporary or permanent. So this is why there's a right-of-way act and right-of-way industry. Just to kind of give you an idea for the basis of it. So this is the law, the federal law, the Uniform Relocation Act, Uniform Relocation Assistance and Real Property Acquisition Policies Act. We call it the URA. And most states follow the URA to the letter and then also add additional requirements depending on, just depending on state to state. So Oregon and Washington are a little bit different, but for the most part, pretty similar as for state or federal funded projects. Go ahead. This is sort of a real basic overview of the process. Relocation is actually it's an entirely separate, it's not separate from, but it's done separately than an acquisition of a easement or something like that. And so this would be, survey, if John had been here, I would have said, when we received the plans from John, we would then provide notice, order an appraisal, go through the offer, negotiate, and you either reach a settlement, they either accept, or if worst case scenario, you have to condemn the property. And then you deposit that amount with the court and go from there. Yeah.
Before you go beyond that, could you spend a little bit of time and talk about the appraise authority establishes compensation and then the offer, just those three boxes? Talk about that a little more.
Yeah. So the appraisal is done by an appraiser who's generally certified as an MAI, which I think is master appraiser. And they are independent from us. You come up with their own value opinions, and then we receive that. We go through it and then write a recommendation memo to the whatever authority it is, whether it's an agency or a board or authority. And they review that for whatever their parameters are. And then we receive what's called a signed letter of just compensation. And that's authorizes us to make an offer based on that amount. If there's any kind of questions or disagreements or revisions required, it goes back to the appraiser, and then that's kind of a dialogue until it gets worked out.
So you get one appraiser, and if the authority doesn't feel good about the appraised value, you what, go back to the appraiser? But the appraiser has the number that we have to live to, or how does that work?
So I did skip a part, which is there's also generally a review appraiser, especially on state or federal funded projects. It's another appraiser that reviews that appraisal to see if it's good. If it's not a requirement, it's an opinion, but it's a opinion that you can rely on, that is like credible. And so, there has to be some source for the value that can be kind of, it's like an expert has determined that this is the value. If there's any issues with that, the appraisers are generally on hand, or they've written into their reports caveats like special assumptions or something like that, depending on the situation, that can be either worked out through a survey or further investigation or studies done on ordered by the authority.
So a question for you. You turn your mic off. So let's say we want to proceed forward and get an appraised value of a piece of property. Is there a set list of authorized appraisers for this, or how do we go about doing that?
Well, at least in this area, there's a few appraisers that are certified and are specialized in right-of-way appraisals, which are quite a bit more in depth. I mean, a normal like residential appraisal is a few pages, maybe. These are between 70 and 150 pages. Lots of detail into the comps. What they do is they basically write this report as though they're going to have to defend it in court. And so appraisers are generally very opinionated, and they have a reason for every opinion they have, or they have a reason why they couldn't give one.
So we get an appraiser, they do it. Before we use that, it goes to a second appraiser for a technical review?
Yeah, he just kind of goes over the facts. And then if he finds any kind of discrepancies or anything like that, he notifies the appraiser, and then there would be revisions. And then assuming that he does approve the appraisal, then it goes to the authority, and they would, if there are questions about the value or anything like that, or why, those are things that we would work through.
And then if you go to your authority establishes just compensation, what typically does the authority do with those two documents to come up with an offer?
Well, usually they just read the appraisal, and if they approve the value, then we already have the documents as a right-of-way consultant. And so we've probably prepared templates for the project. And once we have authorization to move forward with making the offer, we then fill in that information into the paperwork and do a formal presentation, which in Oregon, I know it's in cases where there is the potential for eminent domain, that there's a 40-day minimum for review. And they can agree or disagree before that, but we all hope that there's plenty more time than 40 days because sometimes, you know, negotiations become complex depending on the situation. But normally the authority or the agency that they hire, if they hire a outside consultancy, then they don't do the documents.
Nate, did you want to go ahead and ask your question?
Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. I have two questions regarding acquisition. The first is, and this may be a question for folks on our board, but with the different funding sources that we will be using, whether they be grants or allocated funds from states of Washington and Oregon, ODOT, WSDOT, are there any restrictions in our ability to expend those funds for property acquisition? And a follow-on question to that is, since it appears to me that most of the right-of-way acquisition will be for things that are approaches to the bridge, both on the Oregon and Washington side, do those fall under our purview, or would they be acquisitions that the states of Washington and Oregon respectively would acquire leading up to our bridge? I'm not sure if I'm being super clear about that, but hopefully somebody can dig in a little bit on that and maybe flesh that out. Thank you.
I can try to answer that. I think the funding sources, if there's specific rules from those sources about what you can and can't spend it on, then that would come into effect. Otherwise, it's generally by regulations. As far as who owns the property and whose purview it is, I think we're kind of trying to figure that out because we're, you know, a new agency, and generally one of the DOTs has oversight over projects, even federally funded, because they have agreements with the FHWA. So usually, I mean, what I would imagine is that in this project, they're going to be reviewed by somebody from one of the organizations that gives us the money. So I would imagine the states and possibly the feds too, and FHWA reviewers as well, depending.
Let me see if this fits. On the Washington side, the roundabout is going to be owned by WSDOT. From the roundabout onto the bridge, that's a bridge authority issue. So if we have to buy land of where that access point comes across to the river, the authority would buy that land from whoever owns it now. So that would be our responsibility. If there's land that needs to be bought for the roundabout, I would think that would be a WSDOT issue.
It's more than just. I was going to talk to your mic, but it's more than just acquisition of a parcel that is going across. There are also easements associated with all of this. I think a lot of, you know, correct me if I'm wrong, but I thought a lot of the complication of this was easements passing over the railroad, the gas company easements, that sort of thing. So it's not just purchasing a piece of property.
Now, I do know that some of the grants that we've gone after, at least one is kind of targeted for this kind of thing. We haven't heard back on whether we got it or not.
Yeah, so a few things on the right of way. The authority does have the right to do condemnation in both Washington and Oregon. We will need to work with Washington and Oregon on the right of way purchases and the transfers of right of way, because there will be even though it's a small number of parcels, there's a lot of complexities in the old structure and where ownership is, and the new structure and who will own the new pieces, and then what will happen with the old pieces that people owned. So there will be transfers there as well. I think we will be able to lead the right-of-way process. However, there will be agreements with WashDOT, ODOT, the counties, the port, private entities on all of those elements. FHWA, because there's federal money, I believe will have some oversight into how we do this process, just because of the Federal Relocation Act and governance that they have over the project. So they will be watching it and making sure, and we can get in a lot of trouble with that. We're not following that process. That are pretty severe consequences if we do not follow that process. So we want to make sure that we check all the boxes when we do any right-of-way process related to the project.
So what about the process between the port and the bridge authority? Is there a special path to that? Are we actually going to be paying for to establish? Are we going to be paying for appraisals of the old bridge and the port's right of way to transfer it to the authority for new bridge, new right of way? It seems like a waste of money at that element.
So, and Teal, we've been talking about this, because they are a business and the bridge authority is a different entity, there will have to be some agreement between the two state agencies on the right of way that's out there today. And there is also relocation impacts of the project hitting that business and what that will look like. So yeah, there will need to be those details worked out between the bridge authority and the port. Part of the federal process is also related. You'll notice that this says post NEPA. There are certain activities that you can do before you have your NEPA documents, and there are certain activities you cannot do until you have your NEPA documents. We believe there's some just the leadway between agency to agency discussions that are different than between private owners and the authority. But yeah, if the IGA does not cover that, there will need to be some separate agreement between the port and the authority on the ownership of the land and the relocation of the port offices.
I guess what I'm asking is, can the port waive its rights under this rule and establish an agreement that both boards are comfortable with that doesn't cost us that?
Well, excuse me. That's kind of what we're working on right now is pre-NEPA analysis. So for interagency transfers or interagency agreements, what it appears to me to be, I mean, this actually, I kind of cover this in a broadly in the second half, but it appears that it's still, I mean, it's still subject to the Uniform Act if you're using federal funds or state funds. But so the process is the same, but if it's, you can certain loop like alternatives based on the state's statewide environmental planning goals, and or if there's a finding of a low environmental impact between like by a transfer, say a parking lot to a bus stop, that kind of thing, that can sidestep the NEPA review process. But there is quite a bit of work that can be done first. Really all you, I mean, if we want to continue, I think I kind of hold that out. Well, so condemnation is just, it's if negotiations fail, then you take it to court and you have to have all of the reasons why you worked as hard as you could to make sure it didn't fail, and then or it could be due to complications in ownership or title. So that could be a friendly condemnation, they call it.
So if we did have to go down that path, how many months are we talking? Is it 6 months? Is it a year? Is it 5 years? What rough time frame?
For possession, you can, generally file for an immediate possession, and so you deposit the highest and best offer that you made, which may or may not be the original established just compensation with a court, and then you start work, and because you have that power, and then you work that out later, and you can continue the negotiation process. It's just that they haven't technically agreed, and it's also really expensive generally. So yeah, I mean, you want to do your best to not do that.
Does the Port Authority, or does the Bridge Authority currently have the eminent domain rights that they would need to condemn a property? Or is that something that gets granted by the states and is in negotiation?
Yeah, the authority does have right to do eminent domain in both Oregon and Washington.
Yeah.
Yeah. And on the condemnation piece, there's a step in the process where once you have defined value, then you can move forward with the project even though you don't own it. And the court process can kind of run parallel to that. But there's a step that you have to get to in order to do that. And it's part of that whole appraisal, why they use certain appraisers to do the appraisal values and those types of things.
Reason why I was bringing this up is thinking ahead. It seems to me that we want to have all of this land acquisition behind us at least the beginning of 1B, which basically means we got a whole bunch of steps to do in the rest of this year and next year.
Yeah, right away is something that we want to get started on, and that's why we're doing some of the work we're doing now is to get ready for that, because you got to do all the mapping, figure out who owns what, because a lot of people don't know what they own. They don't know what somebody else owns. Even state agencies don't know what they own legally versus what they think they own. So you have to get all of that figured out, and that's what we've been working on. But we always gave 2 years for right away. You'll typically hear it's a 2-year process for right away. Whether it's one parcel or 500 parcels, it's a 2-year process. So we want to start that, but the key parcels we want to get are the ones we want to start work on. Some of the secondary parcels that maybe are later phases in the project, you could do those once you start work on the ones you own. So there is some timing where you can't overlap construction. You don't have to have 100% of your right of way done in order to start the first amount of work.
So hearing that basically tells me the alignment that we've assumed in EC2 won't be affected by land acquisition.
It should not be, because we don't have a lot of flexibility in moving it around. So one of the things Teal's doing is creating a list of impacted parcels owners, how much we're impacting them, the type of agreement we'll need with them. And then we're going to prioritize that based on kind of where the contractor would want to start and what we need to get right away. I mean, we know the port parcel is a big one that we need to do right away. There's a piece on the Washington side that we need to get right away. And then we need to start working with WashDOT, ODOT, and the other agencies on agreements of the existing properties that we have, so.
But for the most part, it comes down, there's only, I think, one private parcel that we have to deal with.
There's only one private purchase that we have to do, full take, that I would call it. There are other private impacts that are easements that we'll have to compensate them for the easement that we have, whether it's a temporary or permanent easement. And then depending on what we do at the intersection, the signalized intersection, how much we have to reconfigure there at those corners of those properties, we may have impacts at those corners.
So I know a fair amount about kind of how these maps were established, starting with the Donation Land Claim Act and all of that stuff. And I guess, so my question for Teal is, how difficult is this process compared to kind of a vanilla acquisition?
I think the government property interests and separate agency property interests are probably the most complicated part. The private property interests, depending on their sentiments, may or may not be easy, but they'll be pretty straightforward. As far as one agency condemning on another agency, you know, we're hoping that they cooperate and want a bridge too. Because I'm actually not quite sure how that particular part would work, but you know, that's why we're going to build relationships.
Yeah, because I guess we have the attorneys online. I thought that the constitutional protection didn't apply to governmental agencies, that one governmental agency condemning another governmental agency property doesn't have the same, they don't have, I don't think they have the same constitutional rights. So I'm curious as to whether attorneys know something about that.
Yeah, I don't want to say one way or the other because I need to do some more research.
Shall we let Teal continue on his presentation?
This kind of gives you a idea of how broad NEPA is and how many other acts are underneath it. Yeah, very important. We can go ahead and so this was my breakdown of basic activities allowed prior to and then after NEPA. So I think to sum it up, you could do all of the investigation. You can do a lot of research into relocation. You can talk about these things with the people, but you can't talk money. You can't appraise. You can't make offers, and you can't make people move until NEPA is complete. There are, I think my next one is there are some exceptions, but we can find out. Yeah. So there are some exceptions. Hardship exceptions are on the property owner's part, not on the agency's part. So if they make the request and can show that owning the property and is posing an undue hardship on them, that can bypass the review process. Protective is if, say, they're going to develop a skyscraper or something that's going to make it prohibitively expensive in the future, then that can be another reason. Voluntary is basically not going to be applicable in this situation because best case scenario, it works, but if it doesn't work, you can't go back and condemn later. So we can move on. So yeah, and then on both sides of the river, the DOTs are going to have unique forms and processes, assuming we're being reviewed by all three DOT or transportation agencies. That's going to, and they also have their own process for the acquisitions too, and requirements. So yeah, we were talking about consequences. Now, depending on how your funding is pooled, you can lose the funding for acquiring that parcel, or you could lose your funding, depending on how the agency takes it and how your money is combined, I guess. So we have some strategies to mitigate and stay on schedule. We're trying to coordinate with DOTs and FHWA early to figure out early acquisitions, what they would consider. And then, I mean, Oregon is kind of special because it has a statewide Environmental and Planning Goals Act that kind of is similar to the NEPA process and may have some opportunities there. So we have already been talking to a few of the property owners. We've talked to and they're, they seem okay. but we, you know, we haven't been talking money yet, but we have contact and we have, title reports on their properties. So, and we're still looking into the options for pre-NEPA. It's a pretty complicated process. And then, the right-of-way acquisition process is really more about building relationships than convincing someone that you're right or that the project's right. It's about giving them the information that they need to, you know, understand the situation that they're in and be able to make that decision. I think that varies a little bit with the agencies, but that is something, a bridge we'll have to cross when we get to it. Yes. We just want you to be, feel like we're available at any time if you have additional questions moving forward. And, you know, our contact information is, Mike has it, and we can get it to you too. So, that's pretty much it. Any additional questions right now?
So I guess my question would be, what is the best ways to save money? Knowing that we're going to be working both with Klickitat County and the Port of Hood River in order to maximize the speed we can get this done, the cost savings we have to the authority, as well as the savings that we can potentially have that we can say that's a donation in essence to go against our federal grant matches.
I think that, working with the agencies to figure out, sometimes they give each other easements over their property because they support each other. So I think that will be definitely one way. Another way is to, you know, in the case of appraisals being high or something, if that's based on an assumption where a study could be done or something like that to determine viability, that can change the values of things. And keeping it out of court is a good way to save money, if possible.
Any questions, thoughts, concerns?
Concerns.
Well, you keep those to yourself.
I don't know if this is useful or not, but I can give a 2-minute history as to why the parcels are so strange looking on the Oregon side. Is that something that would be helpful?
Could
So
you bring that slide back up that showed the map?
Oh, yeah, that would be helpful, yeah. Instead of looking at Nate, we don't need to see him. That's why things are so strange. It's all Nate's fault, yeah. And so the way that these parcels got formed is kind of interesting, because first there was between 1850 and 1854, there was the Donation Land Claims Act, which allowed people to file to get 64-acre parcels, which is quarter section. And so we started with some nice quarter sections, and they went right into the river, and some of them were dry land, some of them were wetland. Oregon was not a state then. Oregon statehood was being discussed in 1857. So there's a survey done of waters to determine waters of the state because of the need to transfer from territorial waters to state waters. And that survey was completed between 1857 and 1859. At the same time, there was a river delta there, which is no longer there. It's now covered because there's been all sorts of fill there. But a lot of the shape of parcels, when people subdivided their donation land claims, a lot of it had to do with whether the land was usable or not. Could you farm on it? And so the question was it in the river delta, which was seasonally farmable, or was it in the slough, which was seasonably farmable, or was it always underwater? And so you got a lot of shapes there. The area where the bridge took off from was a rocky area with a few rocky areas around. And so that area had the Oregon Lumber Company was located on that little point there. So that was definitely real land that people actually cared about and paid attention to. But then a lot of the stuff was underwater and stayed underwater until 1963, when the Army Corps of Engineers started the project to fill a lot of this land. And so that whole marina basin was kind of formed then, the spit, the kite spit and the riprap, the channelization of the Hood River, all of that happened then. And so it results in some strange effects where like the city of Hood River's boundary runs through the bathroom that the port owns on the spit out there, because it was, the shape of it was determined by the river delta, and the river delta is long since gone, but the shape of it was recorded in that boundary. And then, so there's all the fill done, and then there was the freeway that was filled, rebuilt in 1950s, 1960s, creating more dry land on top of old wetland. And so the ownership, people didn't pay a lot of attention to it. And so all these weird right-of-ways that no one's quite sure, especially on the spit, which we're looking at right in that map, a lot of things just are ambiguous because it was land that wasn't worth anything, and then it was governmental. So the government's kind of like, yeah, we want the freeway to be built. Sure, just build the freeway. Don't worry about that. And so now we have a situation where Teal and company are having to kind of sort through all of that. And I wish them best of luck in trying to figure that stuff out. Fortunately, it sounds like we're again in a situation where no one's against us building the bridge there, but figuring out whose land is what. We've got these parcels, and some of them, as the fill was done, the actual boundaries of the parcel had to be, they weren't surveyed very well before, when it was under the river. They weren't surveyed nearly as well as they are today. So it's a lot of confusion there. So that's what I can offer there.
So Teal, is that area between 34 and 35, that's all federal owned? Or state?
I think that's. Yeah, because that's a good question for John, really. Yeah. And
So those are tax parcels. They're not necessarily full ownership lines. So that's what John has been working on, and you'll hear that from him. He's went through and got the ownership and the actual ownership lines. Some of these lines are not correct. And some assumptions that people have had of who owned what over the years was not correct. So when he goes his presentation on the 9th, he can go through more of the jurisdictional lines of who owns what, because the port actually does own a large portion of the approach down to the signalized intersection, where for a long time period, people thought that was ODOT. It's actually port property. And then there's a bunch of JAGs in there where the DOT owns portions of parking lots within port property. So there's some interesting stuff in there, as you said, Arthur, some history and lines in there that don't make sense that lead to pieces and parts.
So on the Washington side, number 16 is where roughly where the roundabout would impact the pumping station? Or is that?
Yes, the natural gas.
Natural gas, yeah. Yeah, that's today. But if we develop a roundabout, wouldn't the roundabout really hit 16 instead of 18? Okay.
But 16 is owned by the city of White Salmon.
Okay. But we're gonna have to probably relocate that pumping station, right?
I can give you another thing which helps understand why there's some funniness here. Surveys, they haven't always had satellites, believe it or not. And so satellite surveys are the ability to fix a location didn't really exist. There is a line, surveys are done from a reference point. The reference point for the east side of Hood River and the west side of Hood River are different. The line happens to run right through the middle of this, it runs right through my yard also. So I'm very familiar with that. But it means that a survey, 10 feet from here and 10 feet that way will be from a different base point. So they will not meet up. There will be a gap or an overlap at that point.
Yeah, and you'll have a lot of very interesting conversations with John when he comes in, because he has identified, there's actually 4 different control points in this area. There's 2 on Washington as well. So the project has to pick one. So he has picked one, and then he has to set the whole project to that one, and then everything has to be brought to that one. So there's a lot of weird stuff in this area as far as surveying right away. For a small area, there's a lot going on.
Can you just confirm who's paying for this survey work that's done so far? Is that been, so that's us, right? Okay.
Okay, any further questions? Hearing none, thank you for the great discussion, everyone, and thank you, Teal, for the presentation. We will move on to, that's it, actually. I would be glad to give everyone a little bit of their time back today. If there's nothing else for a roundtable or thoughts from anyone. Oh, there's one.
Sorry, just one thing on the presentation next month on October 9th, the environmental commitments, that's going to be an important one. We're going to go through all of an overview of the commitments that come out of NEPA. And I think it's important for all of us to understand what we're taking ownership from, as most of the group has not been a part of the NEPA process. So we're going to go back and just kind of update everybody on that. So it'll be an important one for everybody to be at.
Is there anything from anyone online or legal counsel update? Is anyone from Mark or Judy online that can give us an update on when they hope to have the IGA information back to us?
So this is Mark. I think we are just beginning to look at it. I understand it's still in negotiations. We will have the next work product that you'll see from my side is an evaluation of how the different status of the entity affects the way that it interacts with certain laws under the state of Oregon. We're wrapping that up, and we'll have that for staff review in this week.
Okay.
More than a week.
Yep. Just so we can let the port know, because I know they're waiting on us. So thank you, Mark. And with that, I don't see anything from anyone else. If there is nothing else from anyone here, I will announce that this meeting is adjourned. Thank you all for coming. Thank you for our presentations, and thank you for Debbie for all the hard work. And with that, everyone have a wonderful day and enjoy the rain.